I'm curious if either on the, well, it seems to me that on the system design side, you can accommodate a likely failure of subcomponents, and so much of the elegance of, let's say, a Falcon 9 or a Falcon 9 Heavy as an ultimate incarnation of this vision of how the rocket should be built, to say, hey, parts will fail, but here's how the system can succeed. And I'm curious if there's any other thoughts along that, how to accommodate anticipated failure, and then also maybe managerially, is there ways that you motivate the team either in advance of failure to coach them on, hey, this is going to happen, or in the aftermath of failure to get them fired up to solve it and move forward when it might be dark times? And like, for example, notions like failure to launch, exploding on the pad, there's all these, it's a very visual, it's public spectacle when you have a setback in the rocket industry. And I'm curious how you manage around failure.
I think it's like quite painful and difficult, honestly, and it feels terrible. The company is sort of looking to, me to, rally them, and so I do. But I honestly feel super bad.
It's like a punch in the gut.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember it's almost like a time, like the stages of grief. I remember in Texas, it's kind of like sort of denial, and then it sort of hits us at dinner. It's like, oh my God, what just happened?
Yeah. It's particularly with rockets. It's just a really space is hard, and rockets tend to fail, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. Even when you've got a lot of really smart people working super hard to minimize the probability of failure, it's still there, and it's quite significant. People have asked me well, why are rockets especially hard? Part of it is everything has to work the first time. You can't do a recall, you can't patch it. It's like 9 minutes to orbit or it's over. And then you can never test the rocket completely in the environment that it's actually going to experience. Mm-hmm. So you can't fully recreate something that's moving super fast in a vacuum on the surface of Earth. You can only really recreate that in space.
Is that a limit of the simulation tools?
Pardon me?
Is that a limit of the simulation tools today, or is that a fundamental?
Yeah, absolutely. If there's any error between the simulation and reality, and there's always some amount of error, mm-hmm. then that can result in a failure.
Yep.
So it's a really, really tricky one. It's in a software analogy, it would be like if you had to write a whole bunch of software modules, and you can never run them together, and you couldn't run them on the target computer. Like when you're testing them, you'd have to test them individually, mm-hmm. and not in the actual computer that they're going to run on.
Gotcha.
Then you put all the modules together, run it for the first time in a completely different or very different computer, and it has to run with no bugs.
That is difficult.
Yeah.
The software analogies to rocket design are deep. The modular reuse. There's many of these. For those who aren't familiar, it's not like this is an aerospace engineer by traditional training coming, but is in fact radically changing the industry. I think applying a CS perspective to industry after industry, and how would a computer scientist or a physicist approach the problem, which oftentimes is a solution very unlike the industry incumbents. There's a certain elegance to it, at least from the outside observer like myself.